let's turn our attention to the United States and discuss a topic that defines consistency and routine. The establishment and early years of the U.S. Postal Service. Imagine the early days of the American colonies, where communication was necessary, but not exciting. There were no sudden, dramatic announcements, just the slow, deliberate movement of letters and documents. The purpose of this service was, and remains, utterly fundamental: to make the predictable transfer of information boringly reliable. Our story begins in earnest with Benjamin Franklin. While Franklin was known for electricity and witty sayings, his time as Postmaster General, appointed in 1753, was one of meticulous, slow-paced organizational work. He focused on efficiency, a word that often equates to the absence of drama. He standardized postage rates, which required tedious calculations, and he introduced mile markers along the routes, placed with painstaking precision, 1 mile at a time, across silent, empty country roads. Consider the life of an early American postrider. Their existence was defined by solitude and routine. The horses clip-clopped at a steady, non-alarming pace. The sound was the gentle, hypnotic thud of hooves on dirt roads, urging you deeper into rest. Sleeping face part II. The tranquil digging of American canals after establishing predictable communication. The next great, yet incredibly slow undertaking was the development of artificial waterways, or canals. If the postrider was slow, canal construction was positively glacial. The most famous of these was the Erie Canal, begun in 1817. Imagine the work involved. The digging was done almost entirely by hand, with shovels. The pace was agonizingly slow. Day after day, year after year, the earth was turned over with a soft, repetitive SHH thud. SHH thud sound. To manage changes in elevation, they built locks, large, concrete chambers designed to quietly raise or lower boats. The operation of a lock is inherently peaceful. The water moves very slowly, filling the chamber with a gentle, gurgling whisper. Picture a typical canal boat, pulled by a mule walking at a walking pace along the towpath. The mules set the pace, 3 to 5 miles per hour. The only sounds are the light clip-clop of the mule's hooves and the soft rush of the boat's bow cutting through the water. Everything is dampened by the water and the sheer, unending stretch of the canal itself. Sleeping face part III. The mundane world of early American factory production. After the canals were built, they needed something to transport. Manufactured goods. This brings us to the surprisingly quiet history of the early American textile mills in New England. These mills were built alongside rivers for water power, a silent, naturally occurring energy source. The heart of the factory was the massive water wheel. It turned with a slow, deliberate splash and creak. Inside the mill, the early mechanized looms were rhythmic, not loud. They made a consistent, repetitive clack, clack, clack sound, a metronome of industry, consider the life of the Lowell Mill girls. Their lives were highly regulated and utterly predictable. They stood at the loom, repeating the same simple motions for hours. The mill, despite being a place of work, functioned like a large, slow-moving clock, marking the passage of time without any drama. Feel the slow, consistent rhythm of the distant loom now. Clack, clack, clack. It is the sound of deep, predictable routine, inviting sleep. Sleeping Face Part IV. The standardization of time in the U.S. before the late 19th century. Every town kept its own time. This system caused immense, low-stakes confusion for the railroads. The pressure to standardize time didn't come from a dramatic decree, but from the simple, operational need of the burgeoning railroad industry. The solution was a massive, yet surprisingly calm, bureaucratic change. In 1883, the railroad companies quietly divided the continent into 4 standard time zones. Picture the scene. At noon, on a specific Sunday, every telegraph operator across the country simply stopped, adjusted their clock hands forward or backward by a few minutes, and then resumed their slow, repetitive tapping. The only sound was the soft click of minute hands moving into their new, synchronized positions. This standardization eliminated localized variations, creating a vast, uniform span of time, a perfect, boring, and utterly reliable framework for sleep. Sleeping Face Part V. The gentle spread of the telegraph, just as the canal connected locations with slow movement, the telegraph connected them with silent signals. The daily function of the telegraph was one of profound quietude and repetition. Imagine the utterly monotonous task of stringing the wires. Poles were hauled and set, one after the other. Linemen climbed the poles, slowly pulling the copper wire taut, securing it with deliberate, unhurried movements. The main sound was the soft twang of the wire as it settled onto the insulator, a sound that faded almost immediately into the silent plains. Inside the telegraph office, the main sound was the unemotional click-clack of the Morse key. Every letter was translated into a simple pattern of dots and dashes. Dot dash, dash dot dot, dot dash dot. This was not human speech, but a cold, mechanical code. Operators sat for hours, focused on the repetitive, predictable rhythm. Sleeping Face Part VI. The quiet evolution of the cash register. Let's turn to an object of ultimate retail boredom. The cash register, invented in 1879. Its purpose was to eliminate dishonesty, and more importantly, to ensure boring, reliable accuracy in financial transactions. Early cash registers were large, intricate mechanical devices. The sound of a cash register at work was the sound of certainty, a mechanical sigh of completion, confirming that 2 plus 2 had reliably equaled 4. The true boring beauty of the cash register was the internal ledger. This meant that every penny spent was permanently recorded, a long, tedious, line-by-line list of transactions. Rows and rows of numbers. $0.15, $0.42, $1.88, endless, predictable data. The cash register ensured that the daily flow of commerce was not a chaotic rush, but a predictable stream of small, documented transactions. Sleeping Face Part VII, the slow growth of the Library of Congress. We move now to Washington, D.C., and the supremely calm institution of the Library of Congress. Established in 1800, its history is one of quiet, methodical acquisition and cataloging, the very definition of gentle intellectual tedium. The growth of the library was never sudden or dramatic. It was a slow, steady accumulation of paper and ink. Acquisition. Books arrived in crates, one crate at a time, smelling faintly of paper dust and foreign ports. Cataloging. Librarians, working in silent, well-lit rooms, assigned numbers to each book. This task, applying the Dewey Decimal System, or the Library of Congress classification, is a profoundly repetitive and ordered activity. Each book is given a perfect, predictable home on a shelf. Imagine the silence of the massive book stacks. Miles and miles of shelves, holding books that rarely move, organized in perfect alphabetical and numerical sequence. There is no urgency here, only the deep, still calm of organized knowledge, settling your mind into a place of deep rest. Sleeping Face Part VIII. The methodical mapping of the American West. The vastness of the American West was not conquered by swift battles, but by slow, systematic surveying and mapping. This work was done by quiet, patient men with very simple tools, the chain and the compass. The chain. Surveyors used Gunter's chain, which was 66 feet long. They walked the vast plains, stopping every 66 feet to lay the chain down, mark the spot, and lay the chain down again. This was a continuous, rhythmic, and incredibly slow measurement process. The notation. Every measurement, every angle, every gentle curve of the land was written down in thick, heavy logbooks. The sound of the scratching pen and the turning of the page in the lonely silence of the evening camp was the sound of order being slowly imposed on nature. This methodical effort ensured that the land could be divided into neat, predictable squares, townships, and sections, ready for future development. It is the history of unhurried, repetitive measurement, drawing your consciousness into a state of tranquil slumber. Sleeping Face Part IX. The routine maintenance of the lighthouses. Let us now focus on the coast and the simple, reliable routine of the American Lighthouse Service. A lighthouse is the ultimate symbol of predictable, repetitive action. The light itself was and is a pattern of flash, a pause, two flashes, another pause. This pattern or characteristic was repeated millions of times, year after year. It is a slow, methodical signal of safety, delivered in the dark. The keeper's life. The life of a lighthouse keeper was the epitome of routine. Every day, the brass had to be polished, a gentle, repetitive friction. Every day, the wick had to be trimmed. Every night, the clockwork mechanism that slowly turned the lens had to be wound, a soft, ratcheting sound. There was no need for quick action, only for unwavering consistency. The ocean waves crash far below, but the lantern room above is still, warm, and filled with the low, steady hum of the turning mechanism. Sleeping face part X. The peaceful process of coinage, our final part, will be the most basic and consistent process of all, the creation of currency at the United States Mint. Money is boring only because it is uniform, reliable, and entirely predictable. The metal. Imagine the silver or copper being heated to just the right temperature. The metal flows slowly and evenly into long strips, a soft, liquid whisper as it cools. The press, the coining press, then cuts the blanks and strikes the design. The machine makes a heavy, rhythmic thud-thud-thud sound, the sound of government certainty. It is a repetitive, controlled percussion that ensures every dime is identical to the one before it, and the one after it, each coin exactly the same weight, the same diameter, the same design. This absolute uniformity means there is no surprise, no excitement, only the slow, rhythmic creation of value.